Marvel has X-Men 97, and DC just responded with Absolute Batman, Scott Snyder, and an avalanche of announcements nobody expected. But, along with the best news, also came the most concerning one. Stick around until the end. This past week was historic for DC animation fans. The Warner and DC Studios panel at the Annecy International Animation Film Festival in France, one of the most important festivals in the world for this format, brought a ton of news. And the main announcement is something we've been saying needed to happen for a long time, while the hype is still there: an Absolute Batman animated series. Before getting into each announcement, I need to contextualize why this moment is so important. In recent years, Marvel did something few believed was possible. It turned an animated series into a cultural event. X-Men 97 wasn't just a cartoon, it was a phenomenon that dominated social media, generated analysis, debates, and engagement week after week. The question DC fans had been asking is when Warner would use the best they have to respond. The answer arrived today. Absolute Batman is currently DC's most popular comic book title. Sales numbers don't lie. If something is successful in a small niche like comic books, when you expand to a much larger niche like animation, the growth potential is practically unlimited. DC took a while to understand this, but they got it. And the choice to make this announcement at Annecy rather than a Comic-Con already says a lot about the project's artistic ambition. Scott Snyder, the comics writer, will be the showrunner for the animation. This is one of the best possible pieces of news because it guarantees the adaptation will be faithful to the source material, with the creator himself guiding the narrative decisions. Nick Dragotta, the illustrator who defined Absolute Batman's visual aesthetic, is one of the producers, meaning the characteristic art style of Absolute Batman won't be ignored in the transition to another medium. These two names together on an animation project is exactly what fans wanted to hear. The narrative structure of the comics was practically designed for an animated series. Absolute Batman stories are divided into sagas that can easily be turned into 2, 3, or even 4 episode arcs. You can have one major saga and a minor one per season. And since the comic is still ongoing, there's enough material for a second, third, and fourth season. From a content planning perspective, it's perfect. But now comes the point that balances optimism with caution. The animation will be done in CGI, and CGI animated series, especially American ones, are a shot in the dark. Sometimes they turn out good, sometimes they don't. And the studio that produced the preview shown at the event, although not officially confirmed, has everything pointing to it being Stellar Creative Lab. If that name doesn't mean anything to you, it's the studio that animated What If. And look, I'm not a big fan of What If or Marvel Zombies. The main issue with that project that made me not like it as much were the character designs, especially the humans without superhero suits, which tried to look realistic and ended up looking visually very ugly. The fluidity of the animation itself wasn't a problem. What If and Marvel Zombies even had cool action scenes, but the overall design compromised the entire experience. Now, trying to look on the bright side of this choice, Absolute Batman has a much more stylized aesthetic than What If. It doesn't need to imitate live action. The characters wear suits and have a look closer to the comics, which might be exactly the area where this studio can get it right. The backgrounds in What If were actually cool. The lighting worked. If they can transfer the animation fluidity and nail the character designs for Absolute Batman, the result might surprise us. But it's impossible not to be a bit hesitant. I personally, as I've seen several other channels saying too, think a 2D anime would work better for Absolute Batman, especially since the character designs lean heavily toward manga and anime. DC invested rivers of money into that awful Suicide Squad isekai, whose story is terrible, but the animation itself is pretty cool. Why not invest in a 2D Batman anime? It would be something different and could work very, very well. At the Annecy Festival announcement panel, a 3D model of Absolute Batman was revealed, but like all the other announcements, it ended up being restricted only to those who were there at the festival, so we'll have to wait to check it out. In terms of a date, nothing is confirmed. Realistically, before 2028, it's unlikely we'll have any premiere. These projects take time, and it's better to wait for a well-made product than to rush and compromise the quality. What matters now is that the announcement was made, the original creators are involved, and DC finally has a heavy-hitting title to compete with X-Men 97 and Invincible in the same territory. Just imagine how awesome it would be to have the season premieres of each of these animated series in the same year. I really want that. But before continuing with the other announcements, a question that was left unanswered today. Absolute Wonder Woman. The saga is just as good as Absolute Batman's, and many fans would argue it's even better. But DC went with Batman first, and it's easy to understand why. Batman is Warner's safety net, the title that has never failed commercially, so they're going to test the format with him. If the Absolute Batman series works, Wonder Woman is probably next in line. Is it a fair wait? Probably not, but that's industry logic.
Now let's move on to the other panel announcements, and there's a lot. And if you're an absolute Batman fan and want to have the original sagas on your shelf before the animation arrives, I left the link to our Amazon storefront in the description and in the pinned comment. They are essential reading to understand what this series will adapt. So secure your issues before prices go up or they sell out quickly because of the animation announcement. And if you want to get Absolute Batman another way, the YouTube shopping shelf down below has Absolute Batman comics and DC Universe collectibles at exclusive prices for the channel. Absolute Batman is the triumph, but the biggest surprise of the panel wasn't a hero. It was the first appearance of an Omega-level villain that we've been expecting for years in the DCU. We'll get there. DC Superpowers. We finally have concrete details about this animation. The concept is a Justice League Academy, not an ordinary high school, but a school where Justice League members are teachers and young heroes are the students. Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman are among the teachers. It's impossible not to think of a Harry Potter with superheroes. And if I had to bet on a character, I'd say Batman would be something like the Professor Snape of the story. Isolated, reserved, but with a favorite student he would never admit to having. Can you imagine? The confirmed protagonist is Black Lightning, but not the adult version of Jefferson we're used to. Here, he's young, a young version of Jefferson himself. Other confirmed characters are Jess Chambers, Plastic Man, Terra, Aquagirl, and Guy Gardner, who, by the way, appears with the bowl haircut, directly inspired by the success that look had in James Gunn's movie. About Terra, I just hope they don't repeat the Terra is a spy and betrays the group storyline, because that arc has already been done to death in this universe. We don't have a date for DC Superpowers yet, but based on the level of detail they shared at the panel, the project is clearly well underway. The vibe is younger, an audience similar to My Adventures with Superman, which makes sense as an audience expansion strategy. If you think Harry Potter with heroes is bizarre, wait until you see what they did with Starfire and the return of a band that marked your childhood. Speaking of this universe, we also got news about My Adventures with Green Lantern, and there's a detail in this announcement that's going unnoticed. The series will follow Jessica Cruz in Los Angeles, studying at a high school named Hal Jordan. Using the name Hal Jordan just as a reference for a regular school makes zero narrative sense, which suggests the character will appear in the series in some way. Red and yellow lanterns were also confirmed, and the approach seems to work with the emotional spectrum of colors, each representing a different emotion, with a vibe that resembles Avatar: The Last Airbender in terms of meditation and self-knowledge. I'm really excited about this project. Remembering that in the second season of My Adventures with Superman, there was a scene where Superman ended up facing a manifestation of a possible Green Lantern, and I already liked the reveal there, so I feel like My Adventures with Green Lantern will be really good too. Creature Commandos' second season. The characters who appeared in the first season's epilogue will indeed be part of the team: Callisto, King Shark, and Nosferatu. They confirmed there will be friction between Nosferatu and the Bride, something we could already sense at the end of the first season, and that G.I. Robot, who got a standout episode, died, and then disappeared, will have a more significant arc this time. It makes sense to make up for what they did with him in the first season. Starfire. This is the animation that will cater to the panel's youngest audience, and the most surprising detail of the announcement is who will sing the opening theme: Hi Hi Puffy AmiYumi, the band that did the classic Teen Titans opening in the 2000s. I didn't know they were still active, but they are back and will be doing the Starfire theme. Pure nostalgia for anyone who grew up with the original cartoon. The episodes will be 11 minutes long, following the Teen Titans Go model, which pretty much defines the tone and the target audience. Characters confirmed in the Starfire series: Princess Amethyst is confirmed, Crush, Lobo's daughter,
Fern, and Starfire's own sister, Blackfire. The story takes place before any adventure with the Teen Titans on Earth, so it's an exploration of Starfire's cosmic origins, leaving Tamaran. It's not the kind of animation meant for my demographic, but for those who are, it seems a lot of care went into what was revealed. And now we get to the announcement that got me the most excited after Absolute Batman, Mr. Miracle.
Tom King, the comics writer, is directly involved in the project, and they confirmed the adaptation will be as faithful as possible in both story and art style, trying to visually emulate what the comic delivers. The studio responsible is Titmouse, known for The Midnight Gospel and Star Trek Lower Decks, productions with a very specific and well-executed visual language. It's not a blockbuster studio, but it has solid technical quality for this kind of project.
And here comes the confirmation DC fans had been waiting years for. Darkseid is confirmed in Mr. Miracle, and this will be his first appearance in the new DCU universe. Alongside him, Orion, Big Barda, and Granny Goodness are confirmed. There was no way to adapt this story without Darkseid at the center of it. He is structurally essential to the meaning of Mr. Miracle's saga. And putting Darkseid's first DCU appearance in an animated series, rather than a movie, is an interesting choice that says a lot about DC's long-term planning. I'm very excited. Are you?
The Joker anime. Just that phrase alone is enough to understand the potential. The premise is this: someone kills Batman, and the Joker decides to hunt down the person responsible, because no one can kill Batman except him. Throughout the series, the Joker starts to realize that without Batman, there is a huge void in his own existence, and he completely loses his reason for living without the rival that defines who he is. This premise is a very clear direct reference for anyone who knows the 90s comics. It's basically a loose adaptation of Going Sane, one of the historic Batman stories, where the Joker believes he has killed Batman, and without him, tries to live a normal life, until the hero returns, and the Joker goes back to being who he is. The name Joker, which is sometimes associated with the Joker as an alternate identity, comes from this comic. It's a dense reference that will reward those who know the material.
The studio behind Joker, Riot, is the same one responsible for the Lord of the Rings anime movie, The War of the Rohirrim. People are divided on that movie's story, but the visual quality is highly praised. That is the most important thing for a Joker anime. If they nail the art style, the series has everything to be visually striking. What we're all hoping for is that the Joker's design here is better than that half-baked one we saw in Suicide Squad Isekai. If they mess up the Joker's face, no argument can save it. And lastly, the most unexpected news of the panel, and also the most divisive. Krypto is getting a solo animated series. This is in addition to the series and short episodes of the character that already exist. The premise is that Krypto somehow ends up joining a gang of criminals, and every time they try to pull off a heist, the hyper-energetic dog ends up accidentally sabotaging the plan. It's a comedic premise, clearly aimed at kids, and it's exactly the kind of thing that will spark the eternal debate. Krypto already has 3 animations, and Wonder Woman has 0. It's impossible not to feel the irony of a dog having more animated series than one of DC's most important heroines. And look, I understand the logic behind it. Krypto became a merchandising phenomenon with the Superman and Supergirl movies. He generates products, attracts kids, and is a safe commercial bet. A dog has 3 series. Wonder Woman has 0. Is this a market misread, or just laziness from Warner?
Chapter 12. Dynamic Duo News. According to Discussing Film, Warner Bros. Animation revealed at the 2026 Annecy International Animation Film Festival that Dynamic Duo follows Jason and Dick as 2 street delinquents who call themselves the Dynamic Duo. Eventually, they go their separate ways. Dick joins Batman as Robin, and Jason becomes a member of the Red Hood gang. So Robin versus Red Hood? It seems so, although this means Jason won't wear the Dark Knight's Boy Wonder uniform. So in a way, you'll have Jason Todd alongside the Joker, which is something you hardly expect, right? The wrap adds, there was a beautiful test shot of Red Hood walking through a subway car, as Arthur Mintz, director of Dynamic Duo and founder and co-CEO of Swaybox, said, when Todd looks into the shiny, reflective helmet of the Red Hood, he sees himself. When Dick Grayson looks into the helmet, he sees something very different.
No footage or images were officially released, but we have some information on how Batman and the Red Hood gang will be portrayed in Dynamic Duo. Batman's look was described as something very similar to Absolute Batman, while Red Hood was described as very similar to the Zero Year comic look, both comics by Scott Snyder. I'm really excited for this animated movie, and I hope it's truly a watershed masterpiece, just like Spider-Verse was.
Taking an overall look at the panel, what DC brought this year to Annecy is its best collection of animation announcements in years. We have projects for completely different audiences. Absolute Batman and Mr. Miracle for adults and comic book fans, DC Superpowers and Green Lantern for younger audiences, Starfire for kids, the Joker anime for those who want something visually riskier, and Creature Commandos for fans of the new DCU. And most importantly, there is finally a project that puts DC in a real position to compete with X-Men 97 and Invincible for the adult superhero animation space. Absolute Batman, with Snyder as showrunner and Dragotta as producer, is exactly the kind of project that can dominate the animation calendar the same way X-Men 97 did. If the studio delivers on the visual side, this series has everything to be the biggest superhero animation of this new era. DC is finally riding the hype while the hype exists. That is the most important lesson from this panel. Waiting 10 years to make an Absolute Batman animation would be a massive strategic mistake. The right time is now, while sales are high, while social media is still talking about the saga, while the audience knows who the Bruce Wayne of this universe is. They understood this, and that in itself is already a victory. Those were all the announcements from the DC panel at the Annecy Festival.
Now I want your opinion in the comments. Do you trust the studio to deliver Absolute Batman visually, or does What If's track record make you hesitant? And which of the other announcements got you the most excited besides Absolute Batman? If you want to better understand the Absolute Batman sagas that this animation will adapt, the video with the complete analysis of the Bane saga in Absolute Batman is right up here. And so you don't miss any details of this new era of DC animations, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell. We cover every announcement, every trailer, and every piece of news. See you next time.